What happens when one of the greatest actors of our generation sits down for what should be a simple chat about his latest film, only to be blindsided by a host who refuses to show even basic respect? In just 33 seconds, one careless comment would ignite a firestorm that would see Anthony Hopkins walk off the set of Loose Women, leaving Denise Welch exposed as someone who let her ego destroy what should have been television gold. The studio lights were bright that afternoon. The Loose Women set was buzzing with its usual energy. Anthony Hopkins walked onto the stage to polite applause from the studio audience. He was there to promote his new thriller, a passion project he had spent years trying to get made. The panel that day consisted of Denise Welch, Nadia Sawalha, Kay Adams, and Janet Street Porter. They all smiled as Hopkins took his seat, adjusting his microphone with the ease of someone who had done 1,000 interviews before. Denise Welch leaned forward with that practiced television smile. "Welcome to Loose Women, Mr. Hopkins. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here today." Hopkins nodded politely. "Thank you for having me. It is always nice to be here." Now, Denise continued, "You have got this new film coming out. Before we get into that, I have to ask you something that I think everyone wants to know. You have been in Hollywood for decades. You have worked with everyone. Tell me honestly, who was the most difficult person you ever worked with?" Hopkins paused. He blinked slowly, clearly not expecting such a pointed question right out of the gate. "Well, that is quite a question to start with. I would say that everyone I have worked with has been professional. Filmmaking is collaborative. You learn something from everyone." Denise was not satisfied. She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on. You can tell us. We have all heard the stories. There must be someone. Was it this person? Was it that person?" She started naming famous actors and directors, throwing out names like she was reading from a gossip column. Nadia Sawalha shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She glanced at Kay Adams, who was looking down at her notes. Janet Street Porter raised an eyebrow but said nothing yet. Hopkins remained calm. "I really do not think it is fair to single anyone out. My focus has always been on the work itself, not on personalities or conflicts. I have been fortunate to work with tremendously talented people." Denise laughed, but it was not a warm laugh. It was the kind of laugh that cuts. "Oh, you are being so diplomatic. So boring, really. Our viewers want the dirt. They want to know what really happens behind the scenes. You must have some stories. What about that time on set when someone threw a tantrum? We have all heard about it." Hopkins' expression hardened slightly. His voice remained even, but there was a new edge to it. "I am not sure what you are referring to. I came here to talk about my film, which I am very proud of. Perhaps we could discuss that?" The audience applauded. They could sense the tension building. Denise, however, seemed emboldened by the attention. She leaned back in her chair with a smirk. "Your film? Right. We will get to that. But first, I think it is only fair that we address the elephant in the room. You have a reputation, Mr. Hopkins. Some people say you are difficult to work with. Some people say you are a perfectionist to the point of being impossible. What do you say to that?" Kay Adams finally spoke up. "Denise, maybe we should." Denise cut her off with a raised hand. "No, Kay. I think this is important. We are journalists. We ask the tough questions. That is our job." Hopkins sat very still. His hands were folded in his lap. "With all due respect, I think you may have confused asking tough questions with being unnecessarily confrontational. I agreed to come on this program to discuss my work. If you are not interested in that, perhaps I am in the wrong place." The audience murmured. Some people gasped. Denise's smile faltered for just a second before she plastered it back on. "Oh, do not be so sensitive. We are just having a conversation. You actors are so precious sometimes. You cannot handle a little bit of straight talk." Janet Street Porter leaned forward. "Denise, I think what Anthony is saying is that maybe we should actually let him talk about why he is here. We invited him to talk about his film." Denise shot Janet a look. "Thank you, Janet, but I can handle this." She turned back to Hopkins. "So, tell me about this film. What is it about? Another one of those serious dramas where you brood and look intense? Is that your brand now?" Hopkins took a deep breath. "The film is a psychological thriller about a man confronting his past. It explores themes of memory, regret, and redemption. I think it is some of my best work." "Memory and regret," Denise repeated mockingly. "Sounds thrilling. Do you ever do anything fun anymore? Or is it all just doom and gloom with you?" Nadia spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "I actually think it sounds fascinating. Anthony, what drew you to this particular story?" Hopkins turned to Nadia gratefully. "Thank you for asking. What drew me to it was the complexity of the character. He is not a hero or a villain. He is just a man trying to make sense of his life. I think we can all relate to that." "Very deep," Denise interrupted. "But let us be real. You are at a point in your career where you can pick and choose. Why not do something that people actually want to see? A comedy, maybe? Or an action film? Why always these depressing art house things? The audience was silent now. The tension was palpable. Hopkins's jaw tightened. I make the films that interest me. I am not concerned with chasing trends or doing what people expect. I follow my instincts as an artist. Artist, Denise scoffed. That is a big word. Some people might say you are just being pretentious. That was the moment. That was when the atmosphere in the studio completely shifted. Kay Adams put her hand on Denise's arm. Denise, that is out of line. Is it? Denise shot back. I am just saying what everyone is thinking. He comes on here acting like he is above it all, like he is too good for us. Hopkins stood up slowly. He removed his microphone with deliberate care. I have been in this industry for over 50 years. I have been interviewed thousands of times. I have answered every kind of question imaginable. But I have never been spoken to with such blatant disrespect on what is supposed to be a professional program. Denise stood up as well, her face flushing red. Disrespect? You are the one being disrespectful. You come on our show and act like you are doing us a favor. I was invited here, Hopkins said, his voice rising now. I accepted that invitation in good faith. I expected a professional conversation. What I got instead was ambushed by someone who seems more interested in creating drama than having an actual discussion. Janet Street Porter stood up too. Anthony is right, Denise. This has gone too far. You have been needling him since he sat down. Stay out of this, Janet, Denise snapped. No, I will not stay out of it. This is embarrassing. We invited a legendary actor onto our show, and you have spent the entire time being rude to him. The audience began to applaud Janet's words. Denise looked around, realizing she was losing the room. I was just trying to have an honest conversation, Denise said defensively. If he cannot handle a few tough questions, maybe he should not be doing interviews. Tough questions, Hopkins repeated slowly. You call that tough questions? You have not asked me a single substantive thing about my work. You have only tried to bait me into saying something controversial so you can have your little moment. Nadia stood up and walked over to Hopkins. Anthony, I am so sorry. This is not how we usually conduct interviews. Please, sit back down. We would love to hear more about your film. Hopkins looked at Nadia with genuine warmth. I appreciate that, Nadia, truly, but I think it is best if I leave. He turned to the audience. I apologize to all of you. You deserve better than this. The audience erupted in applause. People were standing now, showing their support for Hopkins. Denise looked around wildly, her face a mixture of anger and humiliation. Fine, leave then, Denise shouted over the applause. Run away. That is what you do, is it not? When things get a little real, you just walk off. Hopkins paused at the edge of the stage. He turned back to face Denise. Real? You want to talk about real? Real is having respect for your guests. Real is doing your job with integrity. Real is not using someone's appearance on your show as an opportunity to make yourself feel important. Kay Adams was now standing between Denise and Hopkins, trying to de-escalate. Please, everyone, let us just take a breath. But Denise was not backing down. You think you are so much better than us, do not? You think we are beneath you. This little daytime show with these silly women. You probably laughed when your agent told you that you had to come on here. Hopkins shook his head sadly. I did not think that at all. I've been on many programs like this. I've always enjoyed them. The problem here is not the show. It is you. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. The audience gasped collectively. Some people were on their feet now, unsure whether to cheer or remain silent. The other panelists looked mortified. Nadia had her hand over her mouth. Kay was staring at the floor. Janet was watching Denise with a mixture of concern and vindication. Denise's face went from red to almost purple. Her hands were shaking as she pointed at Hopkins. How dare you? How dare you come onto my show and insult me like that? Your show? Hopkins raised an eyebrow. I was under the impression this was a panel show, that there were 4 hosts, not 1. But perhaps that is the problem. You seem to think everything revolves around you. Janet could not help herself. She let out a small laugh, then quickly tried to cover it with a cough. Denise whipped around to glare at her. You think this is funny, Janet? You think it is amusing that this man is attacking me on national television? I think you brought this on yourself, Janet said flatly. I tried to warn you. We all did. But you would not listen. Oh, so now you are all ganging up on me? Denise looked around wildly at her fellow panelists. This is unbelievable. I am the one trying to do my job here. I am the one asking the questions that matter. Questions that matter? Kay finally spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. Denise, you have been hostile from the moment Anthony sat down. You have not asked him a single meaningful question about his film. You have just been attacking him. I have not been attacking anyone. I have been trying to get past all the rehearsed answers and the publicity nonsense. I have been trying to get to the truth. The truth about what? Nadia asked, her voice rising. What truth were you trying to get to? That he is a difficult person? That he is pretentious? Those are not truths. Those are just mean-spirited assumptions. Denise turned on Nadia now. Oh, do not act so innocent. You were thinking the same things. You all were. You were just too cowardly to say them out loud. Hopkins watched this exchange with a look of profound sadness. He spoke quietly, but his voice carried across the studio. This is exactly what is wrong with this kind of television. You invite someone on, you pretend it is going to be a pleasant conversation, and then you ambush them. And when they dare to defend themselves, you act like they are the problem. A producer appeared from backstage, looking panicked. She was speaking frantically into her headset. The cameras were still rolling. Everything was being captured. You know what your problem is? Denise was not done. Your problem is that you have been famous for so long that you have forgotten what it is like to be challenged. You have forgotten what it is like to have someone not worship at your feet. Hopkins smiled sadly. If that is what you think challenging someone looks like, then I feel sorry for you. Challenging someone means asking difficult but fair questions. It means pushing them to think deeper about their work. What you have done here is not challenging. It is just cruel. Cruel? Denise shrieked. You want to talk about cruel? Do you know how hard it is to do this job? Do you know what it is like to sit here day after day, interviewing people who do not want to be here, who look down on us, who think we are just some stupid daytime chat show? Then perhaps you should find another line of work, Hopkins said simply. Because if you resent your guests this much, you are in the wrong profession. The audience broke into applause again. This time it was louder, more sustained. Denise looked around at the crowd, and for the first time, she seemed to realize that she had completely lost them. Her eyes were shining with tears, but they were tears of rage, not sadness. Janet stood and walked over to Hopkins. Anthony, on behalf of the show, I want to apologize. This should never have happened. You have been nothing but gracious, and you have been treated appallingly. Thank you, Janet. Hopkins took her hand and squeezed it gently. I appreciate that. Kay joined them. I am so sorry, Anthony. Please know that this does not represent who we are as a show. This is not how we normally do things. I understand. Hopkins looked at the three women standing with him, then back at Denise, who was still standing alone by her chair. I hope you understand someday that respect is not something you demand. It is something you earn, and you do not earn it by tearing other people down. Denise opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For once, she was speechless. The producer was now on the stage, trying to signal for a commercial break. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of this disaster. Hopkins turned to leave, but Denise found her voice again. Wait. Just wait a minute. You cannot just walk out of here like you were the victim. You came onto our show. You agreed to be here. You do not get to leave just because you do not like the questions. Hopkins turned back slowly. You are right about one thing. I did agree to be here, and that was my mistake. I should have known better. I should have researched this show more carefully. I should have realized that this is not a place where genuine conversation happens. This is a place where hosts try to score points off their guests. That is not fair, Denise said, but her voice was weaker now. We have had plenty of wonderful interviews. We have talked to hundreds of people who loved being here. Then perhaps you should ask yourself why this time was different. Hopkins gestured around the studio. Look at your colleagues. Look at your audience. Do you really think they believe you were in the right here? Denise looked around. Nadia would not meet her eyes. Kay was shaking her head slightly. Janet was standing with her arms crossed, her expression stern. The audience was silent now, watching the scene unfold with rapt attention. I was just doing my job, Denise repeated, but it sounded hollow now, even to her own ears. No. Hopkins's voice was firm but not unkind. You were trying to create a moment. You were trying to get a reaction out of me so you could have a viral clip so people would talk about this episode. Well, congratulations. You got your moment. But at what cost? The producer was frantically waving now, trying to get someone, anyone, to cut to commercial. But everyone on set seemed frozen, transfixed by what was happening. You think you know everything, Denise said bitterly. You think you have it all figured out. But you do not know what it is like to be in my position. You do not know what it is like to fight for respect in this industry. Hopkins took a step closer to her. His voice was gentle now. I think I know more about that than you realize. I have been in this industry for 5 decades. I have been dismissed, underestimated, and disrespected more times than I can count. But I never used that as an excuse to treat other people poorly. And I certainly never took my frustrations out on innocent guests who came on my show in good faith. Denise looked like she had been slapped. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The fight seemed to drain out of her all at once. Nadia walked over to Denise and put a hand on her shoulder. Denise, maybe we should take a break. Maybe we should all just step back for a moment. Denise shrugged off Nadia's hand. Do not patronize me. I do not need you to comfort me. I do not need any of you. Nobody is patronizing you, Kay said softly. We are trying to help. This has gotten out of hand. Out of hand? Denise laughed, but it was a broken sound. This is exactly what I wanted. I wanted honesty. I wanted real conversation. Well, here it is. This is real. This is not real conversation, Hopkins said. This is a meltdown. And I think the kindest thing I can do for everyone here is to leave and let you sort this out among yourselves. He turned to the audience one final time. Thank you all for your support. I hope you enjoy the film when it comes out. It means a great deal to me, and I think it has something important to say. I am sorry you had to witness this unfortunate situation. The audience applauded again, many people standing to give him an ovation. Hopkins nodded his thanks and walked toward the stage exit. The producer rushed to intercept him, probably to beg him to stay. But he gently moved past her and disappeared backstage. The camera stayed on Denise, who was standing alone in the middle of the stage. Her fellow panelists had moved away from her, huddling together in a small group. The audience was murmuring amongst themselves. The energy in the room had shifted completely. What had started as a routine interview had turned into a catastrophe, and everyone knew it. Denise finally moved. She walked back to her chair and sat down heavily. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The producer was now on stage, whispering urgently to Janet, Kay, and Nadia. They kept glancing over at Denise, then back at the producer. Janet broke away from the group and walked over to Denise. She sat down in her chair and leaned toward her colleague. Denise, we need to address this. We cannot just pretend this did not happen. Denise stared straight ahead at the cameras. Address what? A guest who could not handle a few simple questions? A man who threw a tantrum because I would not treat him like royalty? Nadia joined them, taking her seat as well. Denise, please. You have to see how this looks. You attacked him from the moment he sat down. We all saw it. The audience saw it. The people watching at home saw it. I did not attack anyone. Denise's voice was tight. I asked him questions. That is my job. That is what I am supposed to do. Kay sat down too, completing the panel once again. There is a difference between asking questions and being hostile. You crossed a line today. We all know it. You know it too, even if you will not admit it. The audience was still murmuring. Some people were getting up to leave, shaking their heads. Others remained in their seats, clearly hoping for more drama. The producer made a cutting motion across her throat, signaling for commercial, but the director in the booth seemed hesitant to cut away from what was unfolding. Denise finally turned to look at her fellow panelists. So now you are all against me too? Is that it? You are all going to side with him? This is not about sides, Janet said firmly. This is about professional conduct. This is about treating people with basic decency. You failed to do that today. I have worked on this show for years. Denise's voice was rising again. Years. I have given everything to this program, and the one time I try to push back against the usual fake publicity nonsense, the one time I try to keep it real, you all turn on me. Keeping it real is not the same as being cruel, Nadia said quietly. You can be honest without being hurtful. You can ask difficult questions without being disrespectful. Anthony Hopkins is a legend. He has given us some of the most incredible performances in cinema history, and you treated him like he was nothing. He is just a person, Denise shot back. He is not special. He is not above criticism. Nobody said he was above criticism, Kay interjected. But there is a way to critique someone's work without attacking them personally. You did not do that. You went after him. You tried to provoke him, and when he defended himself, you acted like he was the villain. The producer walked over to the panel, still speaking into her headset. She addressed the women in a low, urgent voice. We need to go to commercial. We need to regroup. This is a disaster. Denise looked up at the producer. No, we are not going to commercial. We are going to address this right here, right now. She turned to face the audience directly. You all saw what happened. You saw a guest come onto our show and insult me. Insult all of us, and then storm off like a child. And now my own colleagues are acting like I am the problem. The audience reaction was immediate. Several people booed. Others shouted out in disagreement. One woman stood up and called out, "You were awful to him. He was right to leave." Denise pointed at the woman. See, this is what I'm talking about. Everyone is so quick to defend the celebrity. Nobody cares about the people who actually make these shows work. Nobody cares about us. We care about you, Nadia said, her voice breaking slightly. That is why this is so hard. We care about you, Denise, but what you did today was wrong, and someone needs to tell you that. Janet nodded. We are your friends. We work with you every day, but we cannot sit here and support what just happened. We cannot pretend that you were in the right. Denise stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly across the floor. Fine, you want to throw me under the bus? Go ahead. But mark my words, that man is not the saint you all think he is. He came on here with an attitude. He looked down on us from the start. I was the only one brave enough to call him out on it. He did not have an attitude, Kay said, her voice firm. He was polite. He was patient. He answered your questions even when they were inappropriate. And he only pushed back when you went too far. The producer tried again. Please, can we just cut to commercial? We can sort this out off air. No, Denise said sharply. You want to make me the villain? You want to side with him? Then let us do this properly. Let us talk about what really happened here. She addressed the audience again, her voice loud and defiant. Anthony Hopkins came on this show because his publicist made him. He did not want to be here. You could see it in his face. He thought he was too good for us. And when I dared to ask him real questions, when I dared to challenge him, he could not handle it. So we left. That is what happened. That is not what happened, Janet said loudly, standing up to face Denise. You know that is not what happened. You were rude to him. You belittled his work. You made personal attacks. And when he very calmly and very reasonably defended himself, you escalated the situation. You did this, Denise. Not him. You. The audience erupted in applause. People were on their feet again, supporting Janet's words. Denise looked around at the crowd, her face a mixture of shock and fury. You have all been brainwashed, Denise said bitterly. You have all bought into the celebrity worship culture. Someone famous can do no wrong. Someone like me, someone who actually speaks truth to power, gets crucified for it. This has nothing to do with celebrity worship, Nadia said, standing as well. This has to do with basic human decency. You were mean to someone who did not deserve it. That is all this is. Kay stood too, completing the picture of three women standing united against their fourth colleague. Denise, please, just take a moment and think about what happened. Really think about it. Can you honestly say you treated him fairly? For the first time, Denise seemed to falter. Her eyes darted around the studio, taking in the hostile audience. Her united colleagues, the uncomfortable crew members, the reality of the situation seemed to finally be sinking in. I was just trying to do something different, she said, her voice smaller now. I was tired of the same boring interviews where everyone says the right thing and nothing interesting happens. I wanted to shake things up. There are better ways to shake things up, Janet said, her voice softer now but still firm. You do not have to hurt people to make interesting television. The producer finally managed to get through. She spoke directly to Janet. We need to wrap this up. Can you do a closing statement? Janet nodded and turned to the camera. The audience slowly settled back into their seats, sensing that the drama was coming to an end. Well, Janet began, her voice steady. This was certainly not the show we planned. We invited Anthony Hopkins here to discuss his new film, and instead, things took a very unfortunate turn. On behalf of Loose Women, I want to apologize to Anthony Hopkins for what happened today. He deserved better treatment than he received. Denise made a sound of protest, but Kay put a hand on her arm, silencing her. Janet continued. We hope that viewers will still go see his film, because from everything we have heard about it, it sounds like remarkable work from a remarkable actor. And we hope that Anthony knows that today's incident does not reflect the values of this show or the respect we have for our guests. Nadia spoke up. I want to echo that. Anthony, if you are watching, please know that we are truly sorry. You handled yourself with grace and dignity in a very difficult situation. Kay added her voice. And to our viewers, both here in the studio and at home, thank you for your patience during what has been a very challenging episode. We will be back tomorrow, and hopefully we can return to the kind of warm, respectful conversations that this show is known for. All three women looked at Denise, clearly waiting for her to add her own apology. The silence stretched out. The audience waited. The cameras captured every second of Denise's internal struggle. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost inaudible. I may have come on too strong. That is all I will say. It was not much of an apology. It was barely an acknowledgement. But it was clear that was all she was willing to give. Janet sighed and turned back to the camera. We will see you all tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. The producer finally signaled to cut, and the studio lights dimmed slightly. The audience began to file out. many of them talking animatedly about what they had just witnessed. The panelists remained seated, an uncomfortable silence settling over them. Denise was the first to move. She stood, removed her microphone, and walked off the stage without looking at any of her colleagues. They watched her go, then looked at each other with expressions of exhaustion and concern. In the dressing room area, Anthony Hopkins was gathering his things. A member of the production team approached him nervously. "Mr. Hopkins, I just wanted to say that we are all very sorry about what happened. That was completely unprofessional, and it should never have occurred." Hopkins smiled kindly at the young woman. "Thank you. I appreciate that. These things happen. I just hope that young lady learned something from this experience." As he walked toward the exit, he passed several crew members who nodded respectfully at him. Some even applauded quietly. He acknowledged them with a gracious nod and continued on his way. Outside, his car was waiting. As he settled into the back seat, his phone was already buzzing with messages from his agent, his publicist, and various colleagues who had heard what happened. He silenced the phone and looked out the window at the city passing by. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Rough day, sir?" Hopkins smiled slightly. "You could say that, but I have had worse, much worse." What happened in that studio would be talked about for weeks, months even. Clips of the altercation would spread across social media. Think pieces would be written. The incident would become a case study in how not to conduct an interview. And through it all, Anthony Hopkins would remain dignified, refusing to give any further statements about what occurred, letting his calm, measured responses during the interview speak for themselves.